Hi, everybody. Welcome to Working Up episode 2. Daniel Krakowski with Obsidian Group, joined by my partner in crime here, Ryan Schroeder.
Hey.
With VSM Real Estate. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well.
So we had a little bit of a chance to discuss offline before starting this podcast what we wanted to get to today. And we came up with the idea of, how do you structure a business, particularly for a business that we have, which is real estate. Mm-hmm. But I think you can apply it to a lot of businesses that have a relatively low barrier of entry, mm-hmm. which is most of the entrepreneurs that we end up running into, working with, and people who are interested in a lot of this content. Because realistically, if you're a car manufacturer and you have a high barrier to entry, you're not checking out a lot of internet podcasts on how to start a business.
Yeah.
So, whenever you're thinking about a business that does have a low barrier to entry, there's really kind of two differences. There's the price taker, right? There's the group that is just given what the market price is for what they're producing. It's a supply-demand intersection. And you can think of that a lot of times as being someone who produces a widget, something that's a total commodity. If we create a screw mm-hmm. and they're all of equal quality and they all serve an equal function, it's a supply-demand issue of what the pricing is going to be. And that also will eventually kind of decide what the amount of production that you're going to create for it is as well. Our business is a little bit different in that there is a low barrier to entry, but there's also differentiating factors, right? Like skill of the agents, mm-hmm. perceived value of one product versus another. Why is one cup of coffee more desirable than another? And that's sort of what I wanted to dive into today is people who are in businesses like ours. How do we differentiate ourselves and how do we make those businesses as successful as we can, get as much market share as we can, and not necessarily, sort of recognize that we're not price takers and also that we're not a monopoly, mm-hmm. that we're somewhere in the middle.
Right.
So, I think of, I'll end this monologue soon. I think of business as being very simple. Mm-hmm. What we do, it's really two pieces. It's number one, you can build a better product. And for us, a lot of times that's, improving our skills, improving our network so that we're able to provide more value to the people we work with. And then the second piece is if you have a superior product, how well are you marketing the product so that other people are able to see the superiority of the product that you have? If you have both of those, if you have the best product in the market and everybody knows that it's the best product, how do you not capture market share? Like you will start to succeed and business will start to come your way. Easy in concept, harder in execution, right?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, do you kind of accept that principle? Does that make sense? Are you on board with that?
In a way, yes, but I also feel like there's two main ways that I've seen companies compete in our space, and one of them is price, and then the other is quality.
Sure.
And so there's quite a bit of competition out there, specifically in the residential sector with low-cost competitors where they'll do flat fee arrangements or things like that. So kind of anecdotally, when we started VSM Real Estate, we were pretty insecure about who we were and what we had to offer. So we started by basically saying you can save a bunch of money going with us over these other companies. And we competed strictly on price.
Yeah.
And so at that time, the market rate for tenant placement was 1 month's rent. We were doing it for 75% of 1 month's rent. At that time, the market rate for monthly management was 8%. We were doing it for 5%. We bought the business, and lo and behold, we gathered all these clients who really only wanted to do business with us because we were the cheapest. But we also felt like, shit, I'd rather compete on quality than price because we just didn't. There were certain aspects about competing on price that are not built for longevity.
But don't you think that's a trap that most young people in the industry get into? Mm-hmm. How many new agents come over? I saw it when mm-hmm. I was working at VSM and managing the brokerage, where there's a $500 opportunity, and I'm going to go chase that because it's an opportunity, and I want that. They don't want to leave any money on the table. And when you feel insecure about the product that you're putting out, what else do you want? What else do you feel like you can do to compete, right? You want to get
That's exactly it. While I was insecure, I competed on price. Once I knew that our service was better than our competition's, I basically had this epiphany moment where I'm like, why am I doing more for less? I should be charging the same as everybody else, but giving them superior service. And then I'm still winning on providing the best value, because if I'm at market rates but providing superior service, then I think that's a win for my clients. And the ones who only care about price, to be quite honest, were not the customers I liked working with, because they didn't want to improve their properties. They were cheapskates. They would always get me into fights with tenants and stuff like that because they didn't want to improve their properties.
Story checks out.
Yeah. So people who like to pay for quality are willing to get their checkbook out and do things the right way. That ended up becoming my mantra for business in general, because that's what I call the high cost of saving money. When you're a cheapskate and you want to cut corners, eventually you're going to have to do it right in the end. So you're better off doing it right from the beginning and saving that whatever Band-Aid solution you tried to mess with first. So
for sure. No, you definitely taught me to do it right the first time, and that's something that I really took with me, and I've tried to apply to every aspect of my life. So that trap that people get caught into at the beginning of their careers or the beginning of launching their business, where they want to compete on price, I don't necessarily think that's always a bad solution either. I think as you're learning, that's, we spoke about another business unrelated. I won't go into too much detail about it, but the way that I was trying to plug it into you was the competition on price.
Yep.
And that was, I was also standing behind it, and there's a quality component to it, and an unrelated to real estate, part of the business. But that was what made it appealing, I think, or something that you would consider. But I think you also need to recognize that if you're competing on price, that's not a long-term solution.
Right.
It just can't be, because as you scale and you get more and more overhead, your margins get thinner.
Yep.
And very quickly you're going to learn that you're losing money operating a business effectively. And the market is pretty efficient. A lot of the pricing, the standard fees that people are charging are pretty efficient, because everybody wants to be out there competing on price if they can still profit, and then by competing on price, get all of the business out there.
Right.
So it is a short-term solution.
It is.
Make sure you're thinking of it that way.
Well, there's a pretty specific example in VSM's history where we were doing everything where we were competing on price for about 5 years. And then we got to this critical point where we had about 500 properties under management. We had 5 people on the operations side, 2 people on the accounting side, and the company wasn't making any money, right? We were just spinning our wheels. And then we did like several weeks in a row of all this like soul searching, where we deconstructed and reconstructed the business. One of the things that we found was our worst 80 customers were taking, of the 500, which was a little less than 20%, we're taking more than 80% of our time.
Sure.
So we fired all those customers, okay?
Yep.
And then we were able to reduce our overhead from a payroll standpoint by 60% by doing that. And we raised our fees at the same time. And just in a few months, we went from being the lowest cost to right in the middle. And we got rid of all those clients we didn't really care to have anyways. And our profits went up, and our enjoyment and satisfaction in running the business also went up. So
totally. Yeah. Our business is very similar. I think I'm the most particular. I try and set that example, but I work with exclusively people that I want to work with, that are respectful of my time. And even transitioning and moving solely into commercial, that was something that I wasn't willing to compromise. I wasn't willing to compromise my ethics and do business in a way that I didn't feel comfortable. And that was something that you helped teach me for sure. Goran definitely helped teach me as well. And I think it's just a great principle. Going into the building of the better product, before we get into that, how to do it, I want to quickly talk about, I know that when I was younger, I definitely felt that it was very hard to get an opportunity, to get a shot, to break through. And I felt like if I was good, smart, sophisticated, knowledgeable, that the market wouldn't necessarily reward me for that. I felt like I had all the answers sort of already figured out, as I think a lot of young people do. And you somewhat overvalue what your contribution is. I think that, again, the market is efficient to the point. If you are doing the right thing, if you are good at what you do, and that's both on the technical side, having technical knowledge, but also on the ethics side, the relationship side, you just expose yourself to the market. It's inevitable that you realize the value that you're creating in the market. So I just want to like kind of get out in front of that, because some people out there tend to think, yeah, no, I'm really good at what I do, but no one appreciates me and they don't understand how good I am. Like, have you seen that attitude kind of?
Yep. I had a nice experience with that with a plumber recently who came in here hostile and just borderline rude before we even got any business together, talking about how great he was and what a deal he was giving me. And I was like, geez, dude, take it easy. Like, I just met you.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think when you start out competing on price is, I think, so you can also get experience so that you can have the knowledge to be able to command your worth later on. So to your point, when you're starting out in the business, you should really be lending on the credibility of your mentor or whoever it is that you're working for, and also being willing to do more for less till you get the credibility, till you have the ability to demand what you're worth. But that's something that's earned over time. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't, when I was a hotel broker, for example, I didn't just go and start talking to people and thinking that I was worth my full weight. I mean, I had to train, I had to learn from other people, and I was junior to someone else. And so I think you just got to earn your way up in this business as well.
Yeah, checking your ego at the door when you're young can be very difficult to do. And sometimes the best mentor is the person who tells you what you're not good at, particularly when you think you're great at everything. Sometimes it's, and vice versa, right? Sometimes you think you're bad at everything that you're doing, and you need that mentor to tell you why you're great. So sometimes it's the opposite message that is actually the one you need.
I remember that story I told you about my first boss mentor, Scott Everett.
Yeah.
How I came into his office one day with a suggestion on how to get more business, and he just holds up 3 like this to me, and I didn't understand, and I go, what? And he goes, 3, and I go, dude, I don't get what you're saying. He goes, you got to do at least 3 transactions from start to finish before I want to hear anything about any of your input about what you think we should do with my business that I've been doing for 15 years, right? And so I shut up after that, right? And I thought about it. At first, I was a little bit insulted, feeling dismissed because I had an ego. But then later on, I realized that any thought that I might have, he's already had. You know, any idea that I might have, he's already had. Go through the process the way that he's prescribed it. And then maybe after that, I'll have some meaningful input, you know.
For sure.
So
and
ego
3 is generous even.
Yeah, right.
That's generous.
Right.
That's humoring you. So in terms of building a better product, you know, how, besides experience, which you've already addressed, I think that's obviously the best teacher. Mentor you've mentioned as well. How do you build a focused approach to being better, to building a better product? And I think, again, for us, a lot of time that's ourselves. We are the product. How do we make ourselves better so that we add value in the market?
I think aside from experience, which only comes from doing, your education is really important, right? So what are you putting into reading books and going to seminars and improving your knowledge base? Because when you're smarter about what you're doing, you can offer better insight and more value. And then another thing that I thought was pretty big for me was writing scripts of what I was going to say and getting really good and practiced and rehearsed at them, so that I wasn't trying to like be off the cuff every interaction that I had. I was down to what questions I was going to ask and the way I was going to ask them and the way I was going to move them throughout the house and the whole thing. And by the end, I was so well practiced. I mean, you think of a basketball player, right? If they go and shoot free throws, 1,000 of them a day, chances are they're going to have that repetition is going to have them hitting 80-90% of them in a game. So I think practice and repetition for what you do is also very important to kind of elevating yourself.
I agree. And I love the free throw analogy. I use it all the time with all of our brokers. But there's also the reflective component of it, where you go out, you shoot a bunch of free throws. Just doing the repetition is great, and you're going to be good. You're going to become proficient. But if you video yourself and then compare your form to Steve Nash, who is one of the highest free throw shooters of all time, and compare and read more about, hey, what's the best technique? Analyze, what did my free throws shooting look like today? What can I do tomorrow to make it better? And how do I layer it in? Just one thing at a time. Tomorrow, I'm going to shoot my 1,000 free throws, and I'm just going to make sure I keep my elbow in.
Mm-hmm.
Being reflective and to your point, reading, so important. There's so much information that you can get. And I think there's kind of a nice point that you can get to in reading where you read about a subject and then eventually, you read 5, 6, 7 books, and then book 8, you're like, okay, all of these ideas that I've read from the other books are now similar, and it's just being explained in a different way in different metaphors. I think that's usually a good indicator of understanding that subject material. But reading, mentors, exposure, the amount that we don't know is so big for you and I who have been doing this well, who have tried to maintain a high level of humility and expose ourselves to ideas that scare us. There's still so much we don't know. And being aware of that and not shying away from going into that direction of something that you don't know is also important. And I think that's what helps drive you to really build a better product as well.
Yeah, I would agree.
So say you've been working now for a couple years, you feel like the product is good, you have interacted with other people, your competitors out in the market, and you go, okay, I feel like I'm above average, I'm above the median, I feel like my product is now becoming superior, I feel like the customer interactions that I'm having are great, I'm getting positive feedback. The final piece is, how do I proliferate that message so that people see and appreciate the superiority of my product? And that's really the powerful point. You look at Chris Lindahl, for example, and the product is, I think, in my opinion, above average what they do, and then the marketing is incredible. Like, they're blowing the doors off everybody else. No one's competing. And if you look at businesses like ours, again, the low barrier to entry, but ability to differentiate, marketing budget is where all of the money is spent. You look at, why do you drink Sprite instead of Dr. Pepper, right? Marketing. It's the money that goes into marketing. And for us, a lot of times, the budget to start marketing is the big obstacle. How do you get started? How do you really spread that message and proliferate the value that you have in the superiority of your product?
Well, I would not say that marketing has ever been a particular strong suit for me in any of my companies. We've relied primarily on social media. Back in the day when VSM just started out, at the time, Renter's Warehouse was like the marketing juggernaut of the time. It was like everywhere I went, there was some sort of advertisement for them, they, to their benefit, they had some investors who were able to put 7-figure marketing budgets behind their companies, whereas we did not have that. But word of mouth is the cheapest way to market yourself, right?
For sure.
Do a good job for somebody and ask them to tell a friend. Write a Google review and Facebook and Zillow review and things like that, and kind of grow it one step at a time. But nowadays, for marketing, we've learned how to proliferate our marketing over larger audiences through using Facebook post boosting. We've done, voicemail campaigns, email campaigns, things of that nature. So I think you learn as you go, and you start to. I feel now that I can justify my ask better than I could at one point as well. Again, a little bit of that comes down to your self-confidence and or lack thereof, depending on where you are in that continuum.
Sure.
So
for us, a big part is just, where are you spending your time? What kind of people are you meeting? Are you spending time networking in areas that people congregate who are going to be users of your product? You can go to every networking event in the world, but if it's a networking group and it's targeted for people who are relatively new in their industry, it's a first-year insurance salesman, it's a first-year attorney working on fill in the blank, there's not a lot of value for what we do. We tend to work with a higher net worth individual. So finding groups like the Minneapolis Club, going to chamber events,
right,
that tends to be a lot more functional for us. So it's putting yourself out there, meeting people, but making sure that you're doing it strategically and you're exposing yourself to people that are in alignment with the type of business that you have. That's a big part of it. Obviously, we like the social media content creation. It's great. We can collaborate on this stuff. That's a very inexpensive way to create content that people can engage with, because there's some value. They're getting something out of it versus just an advertisement that they see, and you're really just effectively creating an impression. But I think the other one that people forget about, no one wants to do anymore, picking up the phone.
Smiling and dialing, yeah.
If you can make 50 calls a day, that's kind of our rallying cry. We like to differentiate ourselves. All of our brokers are making 50 calls a day to off-market opportunities, to potential tenants, to potential buyers for properties that we have listed for other people. No one wants to do it, but guess what? Those are meaningful touches. Yeah. Driving past a billboard versus having a potentially 15-minute phone conversation, which turns into a meeting, that's real. That's something that you can take with you. That's a really powerful impression. And, say you have a group of...
And it's free.
Say you have 3 or 4 people working at your organization, and you're relatively small, you're looking to build it up, and that's 200 calls a day per week. That's 1,000 calls, right? 50,000 a year, assuming people take 2 weeks off. That's a lot of people you're reaching out to.
Right.
That's more than you can get, and more effective on almost any other campaign. Are you willing to do the hard work to do it?
Right.
So again, that can also tie back into what we do as to being, not only is it the marketing, but it's the superiority of the product. Because if I own a building and I have it listed for sale, we can all list it online. We can all wait for our phone to ring. We can all make a cool little brochure, right? That's not rocket science. But if I'm also calling everybody and making sure that the people who look like the kind of buyer for that building or that potential tenant are actually aware of it, I'm calling them and I'm emailing them directly, who would you want to list your building?
Absolutely. I also think that there's another ancillary benefit that you didn't even touch on, which is a lot of times they're grateful for you to call them because they are looking. They have a 1031. They need to place some money, or they want to do another deal. And they're like, wow, thanks for calling and telling me about this thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I called people. And let's say, for example, when I was a hotel broker, if I called someone else who owned a hotel in the same city as one I was selling, believe you me, they were really willing to own a larger market share in that city.
I bet.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
So
well, and then also in terms of building the better product, number one, you're getting reps, right? 50 calls a day, you're talking to people, you're meeting them in the market, your pitch is getting better.
Yep.
They're asking you questions you don't know the answer to, so now you have to go research or ask your mentor. So you're filling in gaps in your knowledge as well. And when you're meeting them, when you're speaking with them, they already know that you're someone who's proactive. That's how you got a hold of them.
Yep. It's a ton of credibility for sure.
Then, exactly. So to me, it's like you can very inexpensively provide the marketing side and not have to worry about that as you're a startup, as you're building your business, as you're scaling up. And once you have the superior product, it's not that hard to talk to people. If you have something of value that you can bring to people and you know how to push that message out, they want to talk to you.
Right.
Anytime you can save them money, and kind of saving money is you can think about value, right? Like anytime you're providing that value, they want to know. People are happy to get more value in their lives. Who doesn't want that?
Right.
So I think we can end it there. Thank you for doing this episode with me.
Thank you.
I think it was a lot of this information is hopefully helpful to you people out there. I know it was for me. Ryan, of course, taught me a lot of this stuff. So we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.